First of all, I just wanted to congratulate AQR on 40 years. It's really impressive. AQR is just consistently the most wonderful literary journal. And I'm so honored to be part of it, to have been published by AQR, and to be part of this reading series. And I want to give special thanks to Ron Spatz, who is my first editor. He published my very first poem, changed everything for me. And so I just really appreciate Ron as an editor who's published my work through the years. So I'm just really thrilled to be part of this. I'm going to start by reading a poem that's a pandemic poem. It's not usually, this isn't the kind of thing I usually write. Most of my work is inspired by science and math. But this year, I haven't written anything, hardly anything at all. I've just, because of the pandemic, because of family issues, a bunch of things, hardly anything at all. And so this is the only poem I've written in over a year. So it's about this time, but it's also very much about place. I'm in Paris right now. I'm reading to you from Paris, France, where I'm living now. But I was born and raised in Michigan. And this poem is about those two places. It's very much about place. And it's about water. It's called Blue. Walking up 5 flights in a spiral stairway in the Marais, I recall how water lifted me up when I was a girl back in Michigan, a state so great with lakes, my mother assured me there'd always be fresh water, tideless waves, an infinite series, a liquid eternity in Grand Haven where I floated all summer, sans curfew or fear of contagion. It's dark this fall in Paris. Cafes closed, COVID on the rise again. The cloud ceiling hovers gray and damp. The tap water is chalky with calcium. Down in the street, Rue Rambuteau, yellow-vested citizens protest confinement, capitalism. God knows nothing is perfect. Not even this gilded city where the church stone is heavy as news from home. I'm blue, yes, but even I have to admit Parisian light is a full-on cliche and a sky low enough to suggest reachable perfection. Heaven isn't an actual place, but sometimes when an impulse fires azure through my optic nerve, I can feel it. Or when, at the end of a long and troubled poem, a barbed thrill catches me in the chest, a fishhook in the jaw of a bluegill, panicked, flapping, slick, pulled from Gull Lake for breakfast. There are cities in Michigan with no drinkable water. My nerves carry this thirst forward in time the way gravitational waves convey suns and planets through outer space. Tonight, the great blue dome over Paris is torn open just far enough to let the moon and Mars shine through. The stars are pure theory, dispersing at light speed along with the universe. So the rest of the poems I'm going to read are from my book. It's called Quantum Heresies. Came out almost 2 years ago. The first poem I'm going to read from this is called Supernova. And when I was working on this poem, I was thinking about Sylvia Plath, who's one of my favorite poets. And it occurred to me that what everyone knows about her, whether they know anything about poetry or not, is that she committed suicide. I thought that, it's kind of too bad, but okay, that's what everyone knows about her. And similarly, I thought a supernova, which is, of course, the death of a star, it's all we know about it is its death, not its light. And like Sylvia Plath, maybe we don't all know about her art. So those are the sorts of things I was thinking about when I wrote this poem. It's called Supernova. Dying is an art, said Sylvia Plath. dark energy providing the opposite of gravity. A future sun will rise up in all its glory, so red and ravenous it devours the daytime sky. Matter ripping itself into sound and light in one last explosion uncontainable as art itself. Heaven performs a billion spectacular finales. It's up to us to conjure the rest. We'd all start with divinity and work backwards if we could manage the math. But even Lady Lazarus burned her miraculous hair in the calculus of resurrection. Here at the table, event horizon flickering pink, we begin with the absolute. The Emperor of Ice Cream, Mrs. Ramsey's charm, and light, of course, the way it always travels at light speed. Everything else is contingency. Cutlery glinting like a phantom, peaches in a milk white bowl, figs going bloody blue. The next poem I'm reading is called Chaos Theory. Chaos theory is an interesting thing for me to read about. I always assumed it just meant that everything was chaotic, but it doesn't really mean that. Chaotic systems like the weather, for example, do take on patterns that are recognizable, but we can't predict them because we don't know all the starting points. And this is the famous butterfly effect. A butterfly waves its wings in Singapore. It's going to change the clouds in Paris. And that's really true. So I was thinking about those small things, how the small things at the beginning change everything. And so that's what I was thinking about when I wrote this piece. It's called Chaos Theory. Entangled in the electromagnetic field around a human heart, fate changes its shape recursively. I learned in childhood how destiny turns on tiny things. Cracks in the sidewalk, sticks and stones, apparitions fulfilling the promise of fundamental symmetry. It takes an eye for pattern to see the way the soothsayer sees. Or Mandelbrot, his fractal designs carving the limits of space. Galaxies twirl in a teacup. Animals run through pixelated clouds. New universes, like fictions, arise not out of emptiness, but how it's filled with gravestones and doxologies, ghost of Grandma P everywhere I look, exhorting me to trust in Jesus, lorem ipsum of my soul's erratic geometry. I mentioned Grandma P here. She's a character who recurs in my book. She's based on my real grandma, but she's kind of a ghost. And I have another piece where she shows up like a ghost. And this piece was first published in Alaska Quarterly Review. It's about gravity. Gravity is my favorite fundamental force. I love reading about it. And this piece is both about Newtonian gravity and Einsteinian gravity. So Newtonian with its formula, with the constant, G constant, the two masses multiplied, divided by the distance between them. Einstein gravity, it's about the shape of the universe. If a mass impacts the shape of the universe, then the other planets will fall toward it. Basic idea. So this is called the universal law. Gravity is the gift of shape, the downhill way we tend to roll. So when the bow begins to break, we know which way to go. Mass is variable, hard to gauge, but G is constant. A glimmering icon weighty as Grandma P calling down the Lord at bedtime, putting us all to shame. A body at rest remains at rest. It's a law of Newtonian motion. You can trust the math. So hush now and let yourself fall. Lay down your rockabye soul in the unbounded darkness where a billion stellar galaxies unwind their spiraled arms. Let's see. So the next poem I want to read is called X, and this was indeed the very first poem that I ever published, accepted by Ron Spatz for AQR. It's also the first poem in the book, and it was one of the first poems I ever really wrote, too. I actually went to graduate school to study fiction. I did an MFA in fiction. Sort of by mistake, started writing poetry while I was there, and I wrote this for class. And it stuck. I really have been writing poetry ever since, particularly based on math. And this poem was the poem that gave me the idea to write a whole book on math and science. And so it's a very, very small poem, but for me, it has a lot inside it. It's called X. X obeys algebraic laws, but resists particularity. It's the placeholder of uncertainty, like the notion of God. A variable, a kiss, a chromosome. X signs legal documents in 2 concise strokes. It could be me, you, or the number of poppies we planted out back by the fence last Sunday. After so many days of rain, the afternoon was sunlit, translucent, perfect as an integer. So I'm going to conclude with a companion piece to that poem. And also chronologically, I wrote it last in this book, and it ended up being the last poem in the book. And I see these 2 poems as sort of bookends. Bookends. They literally are. This piece is called Variable. The X could have been anything at all. The sound of wind chimes, a gong, a choir, a cantor, a mermaid, a school marm, cathedral bells. Instead, what a lark. It's laughter. The man who sits in the park across the street has habits of hilarity, disciplined as a cleric. Ha! Exhaled in 8 pulses, stress on the 3rd and 5th. Never the slightest flux in rhythm, volume, or pitch. His breath orders the world into countable sets. Number expressed as a verb. It calls me back. Thank you very much.